Hi, thanks for joining this section. The title of my presentation is How to Provision an MSL 4.1 Live Origin Ingest from your Facetime camera and watch it on Apple TV. So, my name is Alex Leung. I'm a Senior Enterprise Architect from Akamai Hong Kong office. And I'm part of the Global Consulting Services team. And one of our job function is to serve as trust advisors to regional and global broadcasters, helping them to assess, evaluate, and choose the right OTT technological elements and apply it to their OTT delivery workflow, and help them navigate through the complex array of OTT technical choices. And so in case your organization having some challenging problems or challenging new development work that you would like to seek our help on consulting and advisory work, please contact myself or the consulting@akamai.com mailing list. So let me highlight today's agenda. First part, I will highlight some of the existing challenges of doing live broadcasting over the internet. And then I'll highlight our new Media Service Live 4.x product line and how we re-architect it, redesign it to address the aforementioned challenges. Those being our key differentiators, key value propositions. And the final part would be a demonstration using the my MacBook Air's Facetime camera as an encoder, using a pre-configured MSL 4.1 configuration as the ingest point and delivery means, and finally view it on the Apple TV. Great. I would like to say a word thanks to my colleague Dominic. He just found me a good adapter so that my Apple TV is now functioning. Thank you. So now let's talk about some of the key challenges in OTT live broadcast. So if you go back in time, maybe 5 years ago, OTT, over-the-top delivery live broadcasting over the internet, it sort of plays a subsidiary or complementary role to the traditional broadcasting over cable or over TV antenna. So you notice big broadcasters, they will do what they have been doing, delivering big sporting events over cable TV, but with also the complementary service complementing the experience by having the OTT stream viewable on mobile devices. That's sort of the situation 5 years ago. But as the situation evolves, everyone here must heard about the trend of cord cutting, that subscribers are now becoming OTT first or OTT only viewers. By that, what we mean is viewers are now treating the internet as the most preferred or even the only preferred TV channel. So as of today, using OTT to watch video streams is no longer, like 5 years ago, a supplementary or complementary way of watching TV. It is a primary or even the most preferred way of watching TV. So now, as unstoppable as the cord cutting and OTT trend, there remains at least 4 existing challenges for doing OTT well, for doing OTT in a manner that matches or even exceeds traditional broadcast. Number one is, how do you consistently contribute high quality 24/7 live linear stream in various packaging format that's friendly to a diverse array of screens, diverse array of viewing devices. It could be iPhone, it could be over 10,000 variants of Androids, Roku, Apple TV. And how to do it at scale. It is a complex objective. The second challenge being how do you achieve broadcast reliability online? When we talk about reliability, viewers are comparing with traditional cable broadcasting experience. When's the last time you observe your cable TV becoming malfunction or the stream stops? You probably don't have a strong impression of such failure, right? When it turns on, it just works, and when you switch channels, there's no rebuffering. How do we deliver OTT experience that matches such reliability or even exceeding it is another challenge. Now, the third challenge being how do you minimize latency between broadcast and OTT stream? You don't want your OTT viewer to get into the embarrassing situation in which the viewer is watching his or her favorite sporting event, could be a soccer game, but the viewer only witnessed the epic moment of his favorite team winning a soccer goal at an embarrassing 30-second latency compared to his next door neighbor using the old-fashioned cable TV, right? So you probably hear about terrible story like hearing your next door neighbor cheering for the soccer goal, but you didn't know what happened, or maybe for my case, I even went to the bathroom and missed the epic moment. So that's a challenge. 5 years ago, again, like 30 seconds behind, the OTT viewing being a complementary service, it could be acceptable, but it's no longer acceptable today. Now, the last challenge being about how do you quickly identify and reacting to ingest stream health issues. Every quality and assurance starts with a stable ingest. If the first mile got corrupted or becomes unstable, then CDN would not be able to help you, and the last mile would not be able to help you. So ensuring the first mile stability is also one of the major challenge. So in response to these challenges, Akamai's MSL 4.x is specifically designed and architected to address these challenges. So we, in summary, MSL 4 is Akamai's live origin solution specifically designed to bring the experience of broadcast TV online. Or in other words, we're trying to transform the internet into the 21st century's TV antenna. And here you can see a bird's eye view of the MSL 4.x. You can get a sneak preview of some of the new technical elements we are adding into the scheme to address the aforementioned challenges. For example, on the camera side, you can see we have a new orange color arrow live stream that's protected by first mile acceleration. What we mean by that is we have a technical element called IAS, Ingest Acceleration Source, that match with another technical element called IAT, Ingest Acceleration Target, which resides in the Akamai entry point. And between IAS and IAT, they communicate in UDP protocol, in contrast to the traditional ingest of using TCP. By using UDP, broadcasters can overcome some of the traditional issue with TCP during high throughput transmission. To just highlight one issue with TCP during high throughput, whenever there's packet drop, the traditional congestion control and retransmission mechanism of TCP is very conservative. So you probably heard of it will fall back to a very low bit rate and then start ramping up to ensure there's no congestion again. This is called the slow start mechanism. But in effect, it is a waste of the first mile bandwidth by being too conservative. So with UDP, we break away from the TCP congestion control, break away from the slow start. So reduce the waste of throughput during the retransmission incidents. Now, to add a further protection to the high throughput, we have done resilient coding, which I will talk a bit more in the subsequent slide. So once successfully ingest, you can treat Akamai as your internet's fast link. We can deliver the video bits to any part of the world in the most optimum fashion. And we've designed our system so that the videos are viewable on the vast array of viewing devices. If it's Android, the most optimum packaging format could be Dash. If it's iOS, the optimum packaging format could be HLS. Right. So let's do a deeper dive into these key differentiators or key value propositions. I mentioned I will talk more about the ingest acceleration and in particular the resilient coding. Resilient coding, we are adding a bit more redundancy into the stream so that in the unfortunate case when there's a packet drop of the UDP packet, the IAT, the receiving end, the ingest acceleration target, could still reconstruct the right video frame out of the rest of the packet that's not dropped. So that further assures a very high throughput, very reduced probability of retransmission needed way of transmission. And this has been successfully proven in the field. We are proud to share with you in last year's Olympic, the ingest acceleration was helping broadcasters to stream very high resolution, thus very high throughput bits from Brazil. It was the VR beach volleyball. So the total aggregated bit rate could be over 50 megabit per second. So to do this very high throughput using traditional TCP would be very risky. But with the help from ingest acceleration, we were able to deliver very smooth and consistently high throughput first mile ingest. Now we also have a key differentiator in MSL 4.x, which is called the self-healing network. By that we mean the connection between the encoder and the entry point are always in a healthy state thanks to the self-healing mechanism. For example, in a 2 or 3 hours or even 4 hours golf event, there could be cases in which the entry point becomes unhealthy or malfunctioned. In that case, when it happens, Akamai's entry point will assist the encoder to do a DNS name resolution again, and using Akamai's proven DNS resolution mapping mechanism, the new DNS name resolution will map the encoder connection to a new entry point, which is healthy and optimal in terms of network latency and in terms of its connection characteristics with the encoder. So this all happens automatically and within a fraction of a second. So as to ensure the first mile ingest never stops and keeps coming into the CDN. Now the third key differentiator being low latency. Traditionally, if you use our former MSL 3.2 products, you'll probably notice the latency by default is 30 seconds plus behind the live broadcast. And as we nowadays realize, this is no longer acceptable. In MSL 4.x, we improve the architecture, and also we allow shorter segments. So if you read the HLS spec from Apple, the segment duration is conservatively recommended to set at 10 seconds. And the player characteristic of Apple devices is that it will buffer three segments before it is allowed to play back the first frame. So there you go, 10-second segment plus 3 segments in the buffer, that means 30 seconds. So at least if everyone follows the very conservative defined recommendation, 30 second plus latency is unavoidable. But then in MSL 4.x, we support up to 2-second segments. And through special consulting service, we can assist customers to do 1-second segment. So the shortening of segment is one of the key reason why we achieve the overall lower latency in MSL 4.x. Lastly, we have enhanced our first mile monitoring. We now do near real-time first mile monitoring. In about less than 1 minute, you can see the various important metrics of your first mile ingest, including bit rate, latency, number of streams, packet loss, error rates. So broadcasters now can rest assured and never miss a beat in terms of tracking the quality of your ingest. So the above are all the theory. I think there's no better way to experience it than we do it together here to create our own OTT live ingest using the Facetime camera and a free encoder, FFM pack, and see it for yourself. Now, the FFM pack command, it looks a bit daunting, but let's do an overview of it step by step. Firstly, the dash out specify the frame rate. So frame rate of 30 frames per second is the only frame rate allowed and supported in the FaceTime camera. So I just set to 30. Now, the FaceTime camera supports 3 different resolutions. For this demo, I picked the 720p resolution. Now, to assist the latency checking, we are drawing a little white color rectangle on the top left-hand corner of the frame and showing the Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, for the video encoding scheme, we are using H.264. And we are doing high profile. In H.264, you can pick baseline profile or main profile or high profile. And Apple TV supports the high profile, which It's a little bit more efficient than main and baseline, so we can pick that. Here, the dash G means the group of picture being 30 pictures constructing one group of pictures. One group of pictures meaning a set of video frames containing the first one being the I frame, or AKA the key frame, plus a certain number of P frame, the progressive frame. And the progressive frame are encoded as delta differences compared to the I frame. So there you get the efficiency of the compression. And together, these two looks esoteric, but together the effect is I'm telling FmpEG to position one keyframe, aka iframe, at the beginning of each 30 frame group of pictures. And with the frame rate being at 30 frames per second, that means one keyframe per second. And you probably notice I have the HLS time equals to 1 here. So that means, these combined end result is I will have 1 second HLS segment with one keyframe at the head of each segment. And then each segment will contain 30 frames. So here you can tune about the average bit rate of your stream. So VB being the average, and you probably want to set the maximum rate. That is, although you set the average being a certain level, there could still be some fluctuation, and you want to clamp down the fluctuation should not exceed 7 megabit per second. Depending on your first mile bandwidth availability, you will need to tune these. And I checked the Wi-Fi connectivity that I'm currently using, and I definitely need to tune down a bit in the subsequent demo. The audio codec, I just use the AAC and the HLS allow cache that's friendly for the CDN, and 1 second segment can achieve low latency. Right. The last one is about the put is where you do the actual action of the ingest. And here I also put a IAS in the same subnet as my MacBook Air. Remember, the IAS is a special technical element stationed at the same subnet as your encoder that will take the traditional TCP-based ingest segments and then convert it into UDP packet with resilient coding to assist the unfortunate event of packet drop frame reconstruction. Okay, so and then the entry point is EP570968. Now, to save everybody's time, I have constructed my MSL 4.1 configuration, and you probably notice it's got the P-EP57 corresponding to this one, right? So to highlight, the P dash means the primary entry point. You probably notice there's also a B dash, that's the backup entry point, right? So as a further measure to increase the reliabilities, broadcasters usually have 2 encoders running and 1 pushing the segments to the primary, 1 to the backup. So in this demo, we'll make it simple. We'll just only deal with the primary. Here you can see the same subnet IAS turns out to be just one VMware CentOS node running on the same MacBook Air. And it is running and it is taking in ingest from the FFmpeg pack running on my Macs terminal. Now, if all goes well, it looks something like this. Here you can get a sneak preview of my living room and then the GMT timestamp on the top left corner, right? So now here comes the challenging part. Let's try to do it rather than looking at the screenshot. Okay, so we will, we'll be using the Edge 2017 Wi-Fi, and the downlink and the uplink from the speed check, you notice it is not super abundant. It's about 7 meg downlink and uplink, so I would need to do some tuning on the average bit rate and the max rate. Now let's check this situation of my CentOS on which the IAS is running. Now let me get the terminal. So I'm trying to see the IP address of this node. Okay. Make sure I can ping it well. Okay, good. So I need to go to IAS and specify a listening port of 10.248.18.143, which is the IP address of the IAS node, and give a port number of 8080. So it's successfully running. Great. So now let's take a look at the daunting FFmpeg one-liner. Now, because I've got a new IP address, I need to modify the IP address of the IAS service. 10.248 and then 18. And then 143. Good. So you can see I'm being conservative here. I'm not trying to push to the 7 megabit limit. I just do something very conservative, try to simplify the situation by having an average bit rate of 1 meg and max rate of 2 meg. Okay, now. Okay, so I'm running the command now. On the IAS console, I would be soon seeing the ingest stream. I can see my Mac's camera. The green LED light is on. Okay, so you can see the ingest is happening, and the IAS is constantly receiving the TCP-based segments, and it is converting them into UDP and sending it using UDP and resilient coding to the MSL 4.1 entry point. Let's take a look at the average bit rate. It is about 1 megabit per second as expected. Okay. So I now hear my Mac's fan is spinning, and now before we move to the Apple TV, let's just do a quick sanity check to ensure the playback is functioning well. Okay, so when you configure the MSL 4.1, it gives you the entry point DNS name. It also gives you the playback domain name, so which is I have copied to my clipboard. And now let's go to the Akamai support player. Okay. let me make sure my max power is sustainable. Okay. Great. Yeah, it's only got 9%. Okay. Now it's in my clipboard. So this is the playback URL corresponding to my ingest. Okay, now let's do a quick sanity test. So here I am saying storing only 3 segments, meaning 3 seconds. Right. So you can see it is working well. There could be some buffering because I'm doing something too extreme here. The same MacBook Air is running IAS, is running FFmpeg, and also doing the playback. So, but it's only for sanity checking. The real playback should be on the device. Okay, so now let's get the So I'm getting the HDMI connector, trying to connect to, so although this is not very optimum, it can still be done. So let's put the playback URL here. So to reduce the chance of audio feedback, I'm doing it in a silent way. And by comparing the timestamp, we can see, get a measure of the latency. Here. Here the latency is about, about 15 seconds. Right. It is not very good latency because the constrained bandwidth I'm using it both for the ingest and also downloading the segments. So it's very likely to get rebuffer. But hopefully you get the idea of how to use FFmpeg as your free encoding option. Is a useful tool. Sometimes you may not have a professional encoder available at your facility, but you want to test drive your end-to-end workflow. And this could be a free and economic way for you to get your OTT live stream running. Okay, so that concludes my presentation today. Now I open the floor to questions. Yeah. Okay, let me show you the virtual machine here. The way IAS is designed, it can take multiple ingest. It can take multiple TCP-based traditional ingest streams and convert them into corresponding multiple UDP streams. So Right. That's correct. As far as this presentation is concerned, is correct. But I would also highlight we have a new product in beta called live transcoding. We support broadcasters to do a ingest of one high quality stream, for example, one single 4K stream, and we'll do it in the Akamai cloud into like 4 or 5 bit rates. Those are derived bit rates deriving from the ingest high quality bit rate, right? So with live transcoding, you don't need to ingest more than one stream, right? Sure, certainly. Certainly, I don't have a specific number at this point. I can share from my personal experience of using it. Here it reports the resilient encoder bit rate. So you notice I would tend to, from my observation, I would tend to say most of the time I observe less than 5% compared to the original TCP, right? Sure. Reconstructing. So there's, this is what we call in the field the forward error correction. Because of the redundancy, it can withstand certain small amounts of packet loss. The IAT, the receiving end, will do the error correction by using the remaining packets that it received. So there's no need to contact the encoder again for retransmission, right? But I should highlight the redundancy does have a limit on how many packets you are allowed to drop for the mechanism to be successful. So it cannot turn water into wine, so to speak. Imagine in the case when like all packets got dropped, then there's no possibility of doing the reconstruction by the error correction. Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. That's okay. That's a very good question. I would, we can actually try it. Okay, by you don't need to. So we can try by not doing IAS. The way to do it is to get rid of the IAS, right, IP address. Then this means direct ingest to the entry point. So we can do, by comparing the timestamp of both cases, we can get a measure. But to do it officially, we certainly need two MACs, one focus on playback and one focus on ingest. Right. Based on my experience, it's absolutely critical when I do 4K or 1080p high resolution ingest, because, for example, in 4K, whenever there's a packet drop and retransmission, then it is not about latency anymore. Actually, the stream will stop, and the end user will observe the rebuffering. Why? Because 4K stream requires on average 20 megabit per second. If you are talking about H.264, H.265 could be more efficient, could give you 15 megabit per second, but you can see these are very high bit rate stuff, and so if there's a packet drop causing retransmission, then we pretty much lost that 1 second, right? The problem with the challenge with live streaming is if you cannot do this second well, the subsequent second you cannot go back in time to fix what you didn't do well in the former second, right? So the challenge is 20 megabit per second. You have to sustain this throughput consistently for every second before you can have a very stable and smooth 4K streaming. So that's the high bit rate part of the answer to your question. Is 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 absolutely critically needed, not to save the low latency, but to save the smoothness of the stream. Now, for the lower bit rate, I observe it will help about 2 to 3 second improvement with IAS, right? So I just remove the IP address, and let's see if the ingest can be direct without the, so from the FFmpeg log, you can see the ingest is direct to the EP. It is getting HTTP OK, right? So, I will close the VMware, and we can try. Sometimes in this particular experiment, we might see a more stable behavior. Why is that? Because my Mac is becoming less stressful. So you can see still rebuffers, right? Yeah. This downlink uplink speed also could be sharing by other participants in the facility, is putting strain on the demo, right? So a very good question. Try for yourself. Talk to your account team and get it running. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm.
Are there any additional components needed on the encoder side or even on the player side, JavaScript, whatever, so that I can use this monitoring, or is this already out of the box, just running or pushing?
Right. For this particular monitoring is talking about the first mile quality tracking. So the good part of this is you don't need the JavaScript or other supporting thing. We own our edge servers, so we can track the heart rate, heartbeat, and pulse there to give you the quality tracking. I should highlight it is always encouraged to have our customer partners to get the encoder certified by Akamai, right? That will work the best, right?
Also, in this case, we make a difference if I use the ingest acceleration or if I want to use, I mean, from the availability of this monitoring data. So, would I see the same here when you do not use ingest acceleration, or is this necessary?
Okay. Right. IAT, where the IAT is used. Right. Okay. That's a good question. From For the very specific answer, I need to ask some colleagues and get back to you. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So, right. If you guys don't mind, I would suggest I try to disengage the VGA connector and then connect the Apple TV one more time. If it's okay, yeah. Go ahead.
You just mentioned that IAS itself is adding some load to in this case, to the laptop.
Right, right.
What's the overhead per stream that we can expect in CPU and RAM consumption? Meaning, what are the limitations of multiple, in principle, independent streams to run from only one virtual machine with one IIS? Or is it recommended to have one virtual machine per production stream?
Right, right. It is recommended to have its own dedicated machine to run IAS, separate from the encoder.
No, but I mean per stream, because for example, I have
No, then
different channels. I want
okay.
to split all of them to different endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Is it recommended to use one single IAS? With
Oh, no need, no need, no need. One IAS can take 5 streams. I've seen taking 10 streams. If you find a decent Linux box with decent CPU, it can do okay, right? So no need to be like one stream, one Linux box. That's too much. No need.
The rule of thumb would be 5 to 10 per
I think the rule of thumb would be 10 to 20, right? Right. I'm talking about like average streams, not some extreme 4K or HDR, right? So, okay, now I disengage the VGA port and let's do the HDMI connection. See if the projector is smart enough to switch over. Right. Okay. Great. Right. Thanks. My colleague Dominic is checking whether there's a channel switch button there. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, it looks like you should then. Okay. Okay. Never mind. Right. I apologize for not being able to show the Apple TV, but right. One more question.
So just kind of like a small recap.
Mm.
The monitoring, the input monitoring feature that's up there.
Right.
You have to have the accelerated IAS thing, or will it do stream packaging, or that's, we don't know yet. Like if all of our customers are doing stream packaging, right, assuming multiple renditions for RTP, will that input monitoring tab work with those guys as well? Or no?
I don't know, sorry. But I do know stream packaging now supports ingest acceleration as well. But what I do not know is whether the reporting, the monitoring supports that, right? What I do see is with ingest acceleration, the monitoring, one of the metric is called the error rate, and that can, with IAS, I can see the error rate under control, thanks to the UDP and resilient coding, right? So maybe maybe we exchange contact later on and get back to you on that. Right? So this demo is about MSL 4.x stream packaging is MSL 3.2 series. So it's strictly speaking, it's not part of this presentation, but good question. Thank you. I'll get back to you on that. Right. Okay, thank you all for your time. Enjoy the rest of time in the Edge conference. Thank you.